We are back. We are back once again to be talking about cricket and, of course, about Border Gavaskar Trophy. I hope you're doing all well. I mean, it's been that kind of Border Gavaskar Trophy. I thought I'd have a very good weekend watching Border Gavaskar Trophy, but then they decided to end it up way before the weekend actually began. So I'm pretty disappointed at that. I had all plans for my Sunday cut out watching Border Gavaskar Trophy. Now I possibly have to watch all 3 days highlights, and that's not going to be sufficient enough, I believe, because not even in highlights, I believe Australia are going to get all out, just like flock of cards or whatever it is. But here we are to be analyzing the test match. I do not know what is really to analyze there. It's been that kind of a test match, you can say. So Australia were never in the game, not seen. Maybe it's a typical Indian dominance at home, like nothing more. I'll just put it there on period, where India calls an opposition home and dominate them and send them back. An innings and 132 runs win. It's not a small feat. They have absolutely achieved it by playing some really good cricket and have really dominated opposition like Australia, because now Australia have come to India as the world number one team, and they really did not look like one can say so. But then, yeah, as you say, it's a long series. You never know what can happen in the coming matches. But now this is what is the result, and we have two people joining us. Welcome, Sandibani and Jaren. How do you see this test match happening? Because we did discuss yesterday when we were ending the show, we might have a result at the end of the day, but we had a result right in the midday of the game.
Yeah, I think for me, what happened with Australia today was again, it's just the fact that we did feel like they played what do you say the narrative about the pitch a lot more, because it just seemed like they were on the defensive throughout, and in the second innings it almost seemed like what do you say they had no answers. And I felt a lot of tactical mistakes as well from Pat Cummins, for instance, when the wicket of Jadeja came through. I felt Pat Cummins should have brought himself a Scott Ball in to ball the overs against Mohammad Shami instead of trying to ball Todd Murphy and Nathan Lyon, because we all knew that Mohammad Shami is not going to be there to try and stay or stick it through for the next few sessions. He was going to go after the spinners. It was going to be easier for him to go after spinners than the likes of someone like Pat Cummins or Scott Ball. And really surprised that Scott Boland did not ball an over after yesterday night, where he bowled a brilliant spell. I think he was probably the pick of the two fast bowlers. And just surprising, because the moment Pat Cummins came in, the game was already done. So very worried also the way Australians approached the game, except for Steve Smith, and he himself is not very comfortable. No one, and probably Marnus Lavish, and you never felt like anyone else knew what to do on those pitches. And I really did feel like Australia did not bat normally as you would bat, because India did
Hmm.
bat like you bat on any other pitch, but it just seemed like Australia really brought into that narrative. We don't know what goes in between in the dugout, but it just felt like they were already worried about the pitch before it began, because frankly, it did not look like they were comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, that is very true, because it just looked like they had lost the game way before it even began, right? Because one thing which we did discuss even yesterday was the mental effect of those discussions which happened outside really did get to them. And that's one thing which we did worry about it as well before the start of the series, as to how whether it'll affect them if you're going deep into the test match, or if you're going deep into the season. And exactly like we expected, that's what happened. The pitch discussion, overplaying or overthinking about a ball really got to their head, because they were all prepared for Ashwin. And what happened was Jadeja was the man who really broke their back on day one of the test match. And even in the second innings, once you have those kind of runs you're going to put in front of Ravichandran Ashwin, and of course, he's going to completely dominate. It's his first fifer in 2 years. He had a dry period where he did not pick up any 5 wicket haul, but good to see him back picking up fifers. Now, Sanibani, as we did mention about Australia, how do you see this particular result really affecting them now going into Delhi? Because we know Firozshah Kotla or Arun Jaitley Stadium can be a tough surface to bat as well. It can keep extremely low. Invariable bounce is one factor. What you see on that particular ground, if you look at the results over the years. Now, talking about Australia's confidence, the dent in the confidence. If they would have had an improved batting performance, maybe even scoring 250 on the final innings, that would have been a lot of things to take away. Even if they had lost the test match by giving it a fight, those are some big factors to take into next test match. But here, getting all for 91, and the way they got all out, by their incapability of playing spin, getting exposed on all fronts, that is a worrying sign, isn't it?
Yeah, I think for Australia, I think they lost the game in the first day itself. Once they were all out for 177 and they could manage only one wicket at the end of day one. I think after that it was going to be a mental battle for Australia, because we all know what India can do. For India, it was a template game. Uh, get the opposition out cheaply in the first innings. The opener gets 100. The tailenders they put up a strong fight. I think the tailenders, the last 5 wickets went on to score in excess of 250. So Tailenders putting a strong front, and then in the final innings, Ashwin and Jadeja and the spinners coming to the party, and Ashwin in particular picking up all the top order wickets and just breaking the backbone of the team. But for Australia, I think right after day one, I think they knew that it was going to be very difficult to come back from the situation that they were at the end of day one. They started day two positively, but it all went downhill once Jadeja and say Akshar Patel got together for the 8th wicket. I think they were still in the game. 80-70, if they could have got India out with a lead of 70 to 80 runs, I think they could have still somehow mentally been in the game. But once again, I think you have to blame tactical decisions that Pat Cummins made with the ball, especially with the ball, because like Jedin mentioned, once Akshar Patel and Jadeja, they were once comfort, like today morning itself, once they got Jadeja out, they could have easily tried in the pacers, and probably the lead would have been closed down to 160, 170. The thing was that we saw this in the third innings when Rohit Sharma saw that Nathan Lyon was hitting Jadeja and Ashwin. He was trying to go after the bowling. He brought in Mohammad Shami, and Mohammad Shami just cleaned up the tail in the 3 overs that he got to bowl. And I think Pat Cummins could have been smarter with his bowling options, also not giving Scott Boland an option. I think they were too stressed about the spinners doing a job for them. Brilliant effort from Todd Murphy picking up a 7 wickets. Reminds me of Jason Kreza. Hope
Yeah.
he continues to perform like he did in today's game. But I think Pat Cummins just thought that this was a spinner's track, and he was downplaying the Pacers, and we saw how Rohit Sharma used his Pacers. I mean, yeah, 15 wickets were picked by Jadeja and Ashwin in the game, but he also had 4 crucial wickets picked up by the Pacers, and two of which were the opening wickets and two tail ender. Like the first 2 wickets and the last 2 wickets were picked up by the seamers for Team India. So sometimes you have to realize that it's not all about spinners, and I don't think this was a 91 run track. I think if the Indian spinners can put on, I think the spinner trio put on 177 runs. If the spinning Indian spinners can put on 177 runs on that pitch, I think it was at least a 200 pitch, to be fair, even in the first innings and on the third innings. There were uneven bounces. A lot of decisions went into the umpire's call. The ball was staying low. But I
Mm.
mean, you have to adjust to this sort of conditions when you are playing in Asia. And with all the hype built around and the pressure that the Border Gavaskar Trophy had, I mean, this was not a game that Australia would want to take to Delhi, because it is going to be very difficult to climb back from here, mentally and physically as well.
I mean, yes, that is one factor which we need to give into Australia as well, because this is not going to be an easy series from here on. And Azil rightly mentions, are we writing Australia off too early? I really don't think we are writing anybody off at this stage. I personally think Australia have a very good chance of coming back, and you never know with Test cricket, right? One good match, and you could right be into this entire series, and it's something which we can anticipate from a team like Australia. And in Delhi, anything can possibly happen. But I particularly think the technique in which way they're countering spin is a worrying sign for them. I know Steve Smith is there. Steve Smith is definitely a bright spot in that team. But even Steve Smith, I think there's a lot of pressure on a player like Steve Smith. But now, if you look at someone like Maras Labuschagne, on two of the innings, he got maybe two best balls of the innings to get him dismissed. You couldn't have done anything much in the second innings or in the first innings. First innings, maybe, yeah, you could have still said maybe he should have gotten to the pitch of the ball, but then you have to say that was a very good ball from Jadeja. It looped, it turned, and that was a brilliant piece of keeping from KS Bharat behind the wicket as well. But now, once again, if you talk about it, I personally feel for Australia, it in the head, right? I know they can clear completely and come back very strong in the next game, dominating Ashwin and Jadeja, maybe finding a method of attacking the spinners. But even there, other batters.
Yeah, I just want to point out that David Warner, the opener, the Australian openers, it was good to see Khawaja at least try to take on Ashwin. Khawaja got out in the second over itself, but he had that expansive drive in the I think it was the second delivery that Ashwin bowled.
You know what,
He
Sandeep, the moment he played that drive, I knew he was going to get out
yeah.
because
Ashwin just
that's
set him up
exactly what Ashwin was
beautifully.
looking for.
I
Ashwin just set
mean,
him up beautifully, but David Warner playing two runs of 38 balls was not his natural game. 2 runs of 38 balls is not David Warner's natural game, and players trying to defend, uh, like consciously trying to defend balls and not looking to score runs is, I think, a mental block. And I think David Warner is right in that mental block. The moment he tried to accelerate, hit two boundaries of Ashwin and got out of the very next delivery. So I think it's all in the head. I mean, if David Warner would have got onto some sort of a start, Kohli dropped an easy catch when Warner was on one. So I think he could have capitalized today. But 10 runs of 41, especially after being 2 runs of 38 deliveries in this pitch, it is not a David Warner sort of a innings. It is not how he should play. And I think if he continues to play like this, I don't see his test career getting elongated for a long while, because he has not been in any sort
I
of
mean,
form
that's one thing which
in
you
the
know
last
from David Warner as well, is that
2-3
Asia
years.
does not
Yeah.
really help him at any cost. Now, I think this is 11th list dismissal to Ravichandran Ashwin, and that's not a good start as well. There's certainly an issue, or he's finding Ashwin as his nemesis. But then let's talk about the test match even in deep, right, where Australia really lost the plot. Don't you think after having India for 240 for 7 with a lead of just 70
yeah.
odd, if they would have maybe cleaned up India, maybe under 100 runs lead, that could have really helped Australia to come back in the test match even in a better way, which did not happen now.
I was really surprised. I felt once Jadeja's wicket came, which was a beauty of a delivery by Todd Murphy. It was an undercutter spin delivery, went on with the hand. Right after that, I felt either Scott Boland or Pat Cummins. I thought really Pat Cummins is going to take the ball because Mohammad Shami is in. We all know, anyone who knows who's watched Indian Test cricket knows that Mohammad Shami is not going to stick around. He's not going to be defending deliveries. He's going to go after the bowling. And it is not going to be that difficult to go after Todd Murphy and Nathan Lyon. They're great bowlers. They had a great performance. I mean, Todd Murphy had a great performance. Nathan Lyon, I will get to him later on when we speak about Nathan Lyon in particular. But what really went wrong there is that, as Pat Cummins could have used a bouncer, could have used much more pace to trouble someone like Mohammad Shami. That's what India did when tailenders came into play. India switched to Mohammad Shami right away. So, and it worked, right? The last two wickets came from Mohammad Shami. Yes, there was Jadeja's wicket that came on a no ball, but the last two wickets came from Mohammad Shami. Australian innings were wrapped up very quickly because India brought in Mohammad Shami. But on the other hand, Pat Cummins did not bring himself on, and I felt that was an error in judgment because then Mohammad Shami went on to smack Nathan Lyon and Todd Murphy left and right, and I think he scored 37 or 41, if I'm not wrong, which I really felt was also
Yeah,
allowed
Makes
Axar
sense.
on the other end to continue his innings because at that point in time I thought India was going to score maybe at max 20 runs. But that right there is what really, could be, we could say, the last nail in the coffin for Australia, because once you had a lead of 223 and the demons in the pitch is already coming up. Even yesterday, I spoke about how the rough outside the off stump of left-hander is going to come into
yeah,
play. How Nathan
yeah.
Lyon made a mistake by continuing to ball on the leg stump. Today we saw Ashwin ball to the left-handers, right? We saw how he balled to Usman Khawaja, for instance. The ball pitched on the rough. Usman Khawaja did not get to the pitch of the ball. His idea to drive the ball was not wrong. He did not get to the pitch of the ball. That's the reason why he edged it, because there was an extra bounce regardless. And if you don't get to the pitch of the ball in Asia, especially when
I
he's
mean, Darren,
balling,
to be very fair on Australian team and how they've been playing, I've been watching this team for a while now, and that's why I still bring that test match which they had in Gaul last year. It was a turning surface, and that's where they were extremely tested. And on that surface, I particularly felt they were very poor in terms of their technique. And one major issue this Australian team has, maybe barring Amanis Labuschagne and Steve Smith, none of them really comes down the track to counter the spinners. And if you
yeah.
don't do that in
Actually,
Asian conditions, then
I
especially against
have.
Ravindra Jadeja and Ashwin, you're going to be in
Yeah.
serious trouble.
I mean, so we have a graph, right, which shows a mode of dismissals. If you just pull that up, 50% of Australia's wicket has been LBW. And if you're stepping down the track, that's the least, you reduce the chance for LBW. What Australia kept doing, as you mentioned, Abel, was not come down the track, but rather put their body behind. So it was like they were not on the front foot or the back foot, they were on both the feet and then propping the bat up. That's how, for instance, David Warner got out. That's how, for instance, Peter Hanscom got out. They were just putting their body right behind the very reason why LBW is brought into play.
Yeah.
And so that was the only way they countered spin. Even a sweep or reverse sweep, you need to make sure you get the right length. So the idea is to make sure you step out, make the baller, make the baller ball a little behind, pull his length back, then you play on the back foot. Or if he tries to still, flight the ball up, you sweep him. So that's the way you do it. At least that's the way Australia should have tried to do. But Australia was stuck in the crease, and that's the reason why we saw them get LBW so often. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
right
mean,
there.
as you see on the stat as well, Australia had a tough day out there, especially when it comes to getting balled and also LBW. Even in the first innings, most of the batters were stuck on the crease getting balled. You saw it with Steve Smith, and you also saw it with some of the dismissal which they had to fast bowling as well. There was no clear feet movement at the start of the innings, and especially when you're playing pacers and even in Asia, quality players like Shami and Siraj, you really have to show the commitment and you really have to be committed to the shot, whatever you're playing. If David Warner had to attack Ashwin, you had to attack him by showing certain bit of commitment. You can't really get stuck into the crease and then expect things to happen. Matt Renshaw was a clear example. On both the innings, he got stuck in the crease and he was dismissed LBW. And Matt Renshaw looked all over the place in this test match. He looked like
And
he
I'm
just did not
I'm still
belong there.
surprised. I'm still surprised with the Matt Renshaw call up ahead of Travis Head. I don't understand this, because I have been saying this, that Matt Renshaw has already played a series in India, and he was poor in it. Like he did not have the technique to survive a spinning track. And I still continue with it. He has not been in the best of forms in the lead up to the
For
series.
me,
Yeah, he had a
Sanjay,
good
yeah,
shape. Please
I'll
say.
just add to what you said. I felt they played Matt Renshaw the wrong position. I feel he's more of an opener. I felt he can do a lot better if he's facing pace, or at least initially, so he can build his innings. I feel he struggles against spin, as you mentioned. But if you push him against quality spin early on in his innings, I think he'll really struggle. But at least if he's played 20, 30 balls against pace, he'll feel a little, find his feet on the find his feet, he can do a lot better. I think even when I don't know if it was when he toured India, when India toured Australia, he seemed a lot better when he was opening the batting, getting a little better, getting a little exposure to the conditions, and then continue against spin. So I think that's where he kind of struggled overall, because he had to face an Ashwin who was bowling extremely well today. Left-handers were not able to touch his delivery at all. He was either edging or getting bowled or missing the length.
Yeah, and I don't see if India gives we India and Australia play on another spinning track. I don't see Matt Renshaw going on to score in excess of 10 in any of the innings. He just can't survive Jadeja and Ashwin bowling from both the ends. I think it was horrific from his side to watch on. I mean, a golden duck on a tour debut is okay, like it's fine. But in the second innings also, the 11 balls that he faced, I think he was really struggling, and it looked like he was going to get out on each of the 11 deliveries until
Yeah.
finally he was caught in the back foot, the feet going nowhere, undecisive whether to attack or to defend. I think caught between two minds. And I think if he continues to do that, he has to come out with a positive intent, either go on attack the spinners or go on blocking the spinners. But I think that blocking the spinners in spinning tracks is never going to be a good option for Team Australia, like with the David Warner innings that we saw. David Warner playing a 41 ball knock in any other Indian pitch, or if a normal David Warner would have played 41 balls, you expect at least 25 to 30 runs to be scored of those 41 deliveries. But just giving the spinners that respect, and just blocking and just trying to block throughout does not help you, especially in this sort of spinning tracks. And you have to take emphasis from the innings that Rohit Sharma played. I mean, 120 runs, he started off attackingly. Once he got comfortable, he was playing the ball according to its merit, giving the respect when
Yeah.
it needed to be given. But you have to at least show that intent and start aggressively. And I think that is why we all were very optimistic about Surya Kumar Yadav coming in and trying to go after the bowling. Surya Kumar Yadav was also, I mean, caught between two minds, to say the least. I mean, 8 runs of 20 balls was not the ideal start that he would have expected.
But for me,
Yeah.
Sandipani, I mean, for me, the difference between Indian batters and Australian batters, the fact was Indian batters looked to score runs. It was not easy for them as well. They were going at a run rate of just below three, but it was not easy for them to score as well. The only difference is whenever they got a delivery to score, or whenever they got a wide one outside off stump, or whenever they got a extremely full in delivery, they were ready to pounce on it. They were ready to score runs. Even Suryakumar Yadav, what I was impressed, I know he did not really, continue. What I was impressed in his first 10 deliveries is he made sure he was looking to score runs. He was, tapping the ball down nearby here and there, trying to score runs, trying to take singles, get off strike. Australian batters did not look to do that either. They just look to survive,
I
and
mean,
it just
that is one
looked.
factor. I'd say
Yeah.
I'll give credit to some of the Australian batters at least.
No,
Krika
I'll
Hansen, the
also just I
Christians
just
really
want
showed
to
it.
add a point to that. I think it also goes on to show Pat Cummins' captaincy. When Surya Kumar Yadav came into bat, he had the opportunity to tap in and take that single. But Rohit Sharma put up they had runs on the board, but they put on a defensive field. So Australian batters did not really have the option of tapping the ball around and then going for the singles. So I think Australia should be more attacking in their field settings, because once you have already, like, if the opposition already has a lead of 50 70, there is no point trying to give them one run and just allowing the play to go on. You have to be attacking aggressive. You have to say, okay, you scored 10 runs off me, but give me a wicket. And I think that is what Ashwin thrived in the third innings, and he got Usman Khawaja and David Warner. He was tossing the ball up, he looped, he invited Khawaja into that drive, and it was going to be one ball or the other when he was going to get out. Similar was the case with David Warner. I mean, he just flighted two deliveries, and then one just it was bowled a bit faster, and it just held the line. And David Warner was
Yeah,
in no position to play that. So I think
right.
field settings is very important in this sort of spinning conditions, and you kind of cannot afford to allow a new batter, a player who is on debut, to sort of tap the ball around and go for singles.
To be very fair, Patrick Cummins and Australian team's shoulder did drop the moment India got off to that beautiful start with the bat. On day two as well, there was not a real fight until you could say in certain patches when they had India 7 down, when they really got Virat Kohli's wicket and Surya Kumar Yadav's wicket. That particular session, you felt like Australia was making a comeback. And once again, when Akshar Patel and Jadeja were batting, it just did not look like there was any sort of penetration. Though it was the best possible opportunity when you had two off spinners against two left-handers, you ideally would believe that they would have been India should have been balled out under a lead of 100, but it just not happened. That's why you have to credit to Indian batters as well. They really did not look to get those cheap runs by trying to attack or slog. They play like proper batters. They really use their technique, especially in spinning conditions, made sure they'll pick up those singles here and there and tire out the Australian bowlers. And you saw that the moment they came to bat today, they looked extremely tired and jailed, primarily because they had to field more than 100 overs on the field over the course of the last 2 days. They always felt like they were in with an opportunity. Even there, it just looked like the game was drifting away. For example, when they got Jadeja out today in the morning, you always say, okay, my God, okay, this is it. Maybe Australia are going to come back into the game. Not into the game. Maybe they can get India out cheaply. Then Shami came and put up a partnership. Even when Siraj was batting for the 10th wicket as number 11, they were unable to get Siraj out. There was a long period where Akshar Patel was trying to score runs again, and Siraj was surviving time and time again. That's where Australia and Patrick Cummins faced maybe that under Patrick Cummins as captain. This was maybe his first major test. You can never say, because until then, maybe Ashes 2021 was not quite a test for him. Pakistan series was not quite a test for him, and this primarily became his first major test. You can say Sri Lanka was one odd test, but you still have to say, with all due respect to Sri Lanka, they haven't really looked like a team since 2015 to really compete against major nations. They will win one odd game here and there in conditions which suit them, but even in conditions which suit them, they will have one off day or one off match as such. That's where Australia really went on to draw that series. But here in India is going to be Patrick Cummins' real big test. And I thought as far he was a complete opposite of what Patrick Cummins has built a reputation for himself as an aggressive captain. He looked extremely tired. He looked like a captain who was running out of ideas. And selection calls once again. Not having the fifth baller was a major, major defect. Your thoughts on that? Because fifth bowling option on a pitch or in India, at least the spin bowling option is very important, because you can't rely on a player like Manas Labuschagne or a Matthew Renshaw to be a fifth bowler, because they're not going to break you out of the jail whenever you need a wicket. They're not partnership breakers either. You need a proper fifth bowler in Ashton Agar or a Cameron Green if he was available at least.
I think for me, that's where Cameron Green was such a vital part to this team. Cameron Green would have been a batter instead of Matt Renshaw, and would have been the third bowling option, at least in terms of pace at least. And if Cameron Green plays, then you would have seen Ashton Agar play as well. But because Cameron Green was not playing, you had to play Ashton Agar. You couldn't play Ashton Agar because you needed an extra batter, because Australia were not confident of their batting as much as they were confident with their bowling. They still felt, Todd Murphy, Nathan Lyon would do the job. And I would say, to an extent, if they had gotten their plans right to India, right, I also felt, as I said yesterday, I covered it yesterday as well, they did not ball to the right lines, I feel. Todd Murphy still did. I felt Nathan Lyon did not. Again, to the right hand as he came round the wicket, where I felt he balled in areas where there was no rough patch forming. There was a rough patch forming exactly where Nathan Lyon likes to ball. Nathan Lyon loves to ball outside off stump, bring the ball in. I felt he could have balled there. He didn't try that either. He tried a lot of things which I felt he tried a lot of things which generally you would see with Ashwin, which is
I mean,
not
that's what I
wrong.
think. Generally, you can take this question as well. Is there a lot of over dependency and pressure on Nathan Lyon to perform in conditions like this? Because when we talk about Ravichandran Ashwin, or for example, Indian fast bowlers in a particular generation, they had a lot of pressure to perform in conditions which used to suit their kind
Yeah.
of bowling. Swing bowlers, for example, Venkatesh Prasad's era, or in era from 2005 to 2010, whenever India used to throw it abroad, there was a lot of criticism on Indian fast bowlers as to why are they able to pick up wickets in conditions which are much more conducive in comparison with India. Similarly, when Nathan Lyon, a player who has really been successful in Australian conditions, in conditions which are alien for spinners, he's been excellent with the generation of bounce he was able to get in Australia, or the way in which he was able to ball in England. But now when he has come to India, the onus is on him. He becomes a prime bowler in comparison with Hazelwood, Stark, or Patrick Cummins here. So that overburdency or that pressure on him, is it getting to him at this point of stage? Because remember, on the other end, you have Ravichandran Ashwin, who's his competitor as well. So does it really get to Nathan Lyon at this point?
Yeah, for me, so I have a few interesting things to speak about Nathan Lyon, and I obviously get to Smith's side of question as well. We have a few graphics on that. Nathan Lyon has, if you look at his bowling average in different countries, Nathan Lyon has better average in New Zealand than he has in India. Nathan Lyon's, I just read out the 5 worst places that his averages. So in UAE, his average is 53.8, which is fair because they had flat tracks in UAE. Then right after that is South Africa, which again is a pacer's heaven. You won't really expect a spinner to do well. Surprisingly able, right after that, the third worst country is India. His average in India is 33. And that is surprising for a spinner of his quality. And there is a reason for that. From what I analyze, Nathan Lyon loves, as I've already mentioned, he loves bowling the overspin. He loves the bounce. And if you look at most Nathan Lyon wickets, it's in Australia, you would see him getting batters caught at silly point, or caught at silly mid on, because he loves bat pads. He will get a few ones to bounce. That's where he takes his wickets. So he tries to beat players with that bounce of the pitch. Now in India, you don't get that kind of bounce. You get more square turn, and bounce isn't as much. That's also the reason why, for instance, Matt Renshaw's wicket, it hit him above the knee roll on the pad, still was given out in India. Wouldn't have been the case in, let's say, Gabba or Sydney, because of the extra
Yeah.
bounce that you get in Australian pitches.
And it was
That's
not
where
even
I feel-
umpire's call.
It was not even umpire's call, which is really surprising because I thought it was going to go above the stumps. But for me, the thing is, now in India, Nathan Lyon's options are reduced, because in India, your chances of getting more LBWs and bold, that's where Ashwin comes into picture. Ashwin loves LBWs and bold, or at max a stumping, right? But with Nathan Lyon, he gets people more caught at let's say on the boundary, or bat pad, or even edge once in a while, where the ball bounces extra more than the turn. So that's where Nathan Lyon really struggles in India. So he isn't really the best bowler in India as well. So that's where Australian conditions are so different from
And
Indian.
Jaren, there's another thing as well with Nathan Lyon, which I find it very different from Ashwin and Jadeja. On wickets which are less conducive to spin, is action or his revolution which he puts on the ball which has side on,
Yeah,
which has extra bit of rotation, really helps him to generate something off the wicket. And he does not
correct.
really have a ball that slides on like an Ashwin and a Jadeja, which
Yeah,
is very important in conditions which are low, slow, and turning. And that's one of the factor why even if he turns the ball, he's going to turn in a certain degree, which is going to miss the bat, which is going to miss the edge, and you can actually let that ball go on its own. You know you are not going to
yeah,
be troubled at all with that. Now here, in conditions like India, for example, Akshar Patel, Ravindra Jadeja, Ravichandran Ashwin, they all have one common ball. Their most effective ball in a turning condition is a ball which keeps straight on, not the one which turns square, not the one which is going
Yeah.
to beat the bat, because that's not going to do anything to the batter. But the one which is going to take the inside edge of the batter, or one which is going to beat the defense of the batter by keeping straight, that's going to be the most threatening one, which Nathan Lyon does not really have. He has a ball which goes straight, but it's not going to get the stump of the batter. It's just going to go straight. It's not going to come in by any margin. So that is where the variation of Nathan Lyon really comes into play, which is inability with variation. One factor which, or one particular weakness which Nathan Lyon has always had in his career from 2011 when he made his debut, is that he does not really have a variation like Ravichandran Ashwin. Ashwin has what,
Yeah.
3 to 4 variations in his armory. Jadeja has a couple of them. Akshar Patel has a couple of them as well. But Nathan Lyon is pretty much one-dimensional. He does not really have an arm ball which is threatening as well. So here is a
Yeah.
reason why I possibly feel Nathan Lyon has been less effective in India in comparison with other compatriots from other teams.
Yeah, I mean, also, you have to see spinners in Australia, right? They have a different way of taking wickets. Spinners in India, for instance, will try and ball on the off stump line and, try and spin the ball into the leg stump and hope, that the players, for right-handers, are cramped. And for off spinners in India, again, you see a different kind of bowling for left-handers where you ball on the off stump, try and turn the ball away, get them caught it slip, or, and then you have the natural variation which comes in. Or the undercutter as well, where you ball the ball off the smoother side of the seam of the ball, where the ball does not turn, like the one, for instance, Ashwin ball to David Warner, for instance, where the ball came in, or the one that Todd Murphy ball, for instance. Nathan Lyon doesn't have a variation of that sort either, able. So that's where he struggles to really, he depends on natural variation, and obviously he's trying the side on spin that we spoke about yesterday. But aside from that, because again in Australia, what you try to do essentially is ball outside of stump, and then the one that then the pitch really comes into picture, where the ball will turn and bounce, or the ball might go straight ahead. So that's where his technique in India needs to change. We spoke about it in case of Ashwin as well, right? The criticism with Ashwin was he never got wickets outside India, because in outside India you ball in a different way, where the drift and turn is not as much the wicket taking option, but the drift and the natural variation comes into picture, where Ashwin was not able to do that initially in his career. Now I think Ashwin is generating that as he's become a wily old spinner. Nathan Lyon still needs to develop that, and that's where I think his transition into Asian conditions hasn't exactly been smoother. That's why you see he's been so active, he's been so effective. Even in England, he's got a lower average than in India. So England, New Zealand, 2 places where you don't expect spinners to do well, Nathan Lyon has been much more successful, and there's a reason for that. And I think that's the reason why someone like Nathan Lyon has struggled. Speaking about,
I think we can bring up the balls per wicket stat as well, right? When it comes to understanding runs and balls per wicket in the batting order, we can understand how Australian bowlers were actually unable to defeat the Indian lower order, because that's what troubled them the most. If you look at the balls per wicket of Indian lower order, and in comparison with Australia, and in the comparison with which India were able to dismiss Australia's tail, that was the difference. Even when teams like India travel abroad, we talk about that one factor, right? How tail enders are the ones who really decide the match, or lower order batting. Even if you get the top order out cheaply, the lower order exploits from some of their all-rounders. That's what really makes a difference. For example, I'll take you back to 2021 when that Adelaide test match happened as well. There was a particular phase where you really felt like, okay, Australian batters are scoring a lot more runs in comparison with Indian tailenders, especially Patrick Cummins or Mitchell Starc or Josh Hazelwood and Nathan Lyon, including that. They were able to score a lot more runs than Indian lower order, and that was the difference there. When Indian lower order was able to contribute, that was in that Gabba test match, you saw India was able to win that match as well. Lower order contributions in test matches have become even more vital. Even if your top order gets out cheaply, if you're unable to contain, or if you're unable to dismiss off the lower order, that can really come to haunt you. And that's exactly what happened. If you look at the balls per wicket over here, you can understand how India were more efficient in comparison with Australia, and Australia, how they really struggled in terms of defeating, in terms of getting the wickets off Indian lower order batsmen and also Indian middle order bats. Indian middle order had a very, I can say, in comparison with Australia, Australia had a very poor day out. But in normal standards, Indian middle order had a very calm day, or very quiet day, because, for example, Virat Kohli did not score a lot of runs, Bharat did not score a lot of runs, Surya Kumar Yadav did not score a lot of runs as well. And with no Rishabh Pant in the middle order, you don't really see that kind of exploits coming out from India from the series. But still, it was comparatively very less. But the lower middle order, like so Akshar Patel, Jadeja, Mohammad Shami included in the list. Even I'll put
In
Ashwin, though he
this
got a
case,
promotion there.
Jadeja has been, yeah. So in this case, Jadeja is in the middle order because he came, I think, in number 7.
Yes.
So 8, 9.
Yeah, he came ahead
Akshar
of
Patel was
Bharat.
number 8. Yeah, and
No,
Akshar
Akshar Patel was
Patel,
number
because
nine.
of
Bharat
Akshar
came
Patel,
at 8.
yeah, Bharat came at 8, Akshar Patel came at 9, and that's the reason why India's lower order is so inflated because Akshar Patel is still the majority of the deliveries and runs that they've scored. But that is how deep this Indian batting is. Sandeep, I did speak about it yesterday as well. If your number 9 batter is of the quality of Akshar Patel, that is scary already in conditions like India. It was a difficult one for Australia to make sure that they
Mm.
dismissed India anything below 200 because
Yeah.
India's batting was so deep.
Yeah. Right. And that was this graph clearly indicates how India made a difference in the entire match. The Indian middle order and Australian middle order and Indian lower order. That was the point of difference if you look at the entire game. Even Australian top order wasn't really great either, but the lower order contribution was the deciding factor, you can say, ultimately in
No,
the
I
game.
think you
But
just can't
before,
afford you just can't afford this. I mean, Indian lower order, that is wicket 6 to 10, went on to play 10 overs each.
yeah.
So 62 balls per wicket is the lower middle order playing 10 overs each. So that is 40 overs of time that the Indian bowlers like prevented
Mm,
the Australian batsmen from coming into bat. And that
yeah.
is, you can't win test matches if your lower order gets to bat say 30 balls at an average of 30 balls, and
Yeah.
60 balls is way too much. And I think this has been the case for India in the last 2-3 years, where their lower order has really expressed
Mm-hmm.
themselves because the
Mm,
top order has struggled. And you have the likes of Rishabh Pant, Shreyas Iyer, Ravindra Jadeja coming to the party at number 5, 6, 7,
mm,
and then you have the lower order Ashwin, Akshar
yeah.
Patel, who are just keeping on extending the tail. Even when Bumrah was there, Bumrah, Shami, they used to put a price on their wicket, and I think that is something that the Australians haven't done. Pat Cummins is a way
Yeah.
better batsman in other conditions. In India, especially if you consider IPL, Pat Cummins plays one of the most sublime knocks. He has the joint fastest 50 in IPL, but the way in which he plays, he just looks to defend every delivery, and it's just not going to work more often than not. And I think after after say the number 9 or number 10 position, the players should just come out and
Yeah.
try to score as much runs as possible in the
Yeah.
shortest time possible. And I think that is why
Right.
Umesh Yadav, Mohammad Shami, Bumrah are way more successful. Even Mohammad Siraj are way more successful than what the Australian team put up tonight.
True. And now this particular stat as well is a clear indication as to how Indian batters or Indian partnerships were at least for a period of 16 no, or at least for a period of 14 overs in comparison in the first innings of Australia. Every partnership went on for just 6 overs, just in excess of 6 overs as well. So that was a difference if you look at the entire game as well. Batting 14 overs, batting 6 overs per partnership does not really help you. Maybe barring Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith partnership, it was all coming in and going out, coming in and going out. It was like a pattern, bunch of batters coming in and just trying to get out. And even there, maybe I thought cameo of Alex Carey in the first innings was pretty impressive. But once again in the second innings, trying to play just one or two shots, trying to survive in India with two shots, that's definitely not going to help you. And if you're trying to survive in
Yeah.
And
India just with
I
one
think that
sweep,
will work only for that one inning. I think
But
if Alex
you
Carey comes
also need
out
to
to bat and tries
understand,
to reverse sweep, yeah.
yeah, but you also need to understand
Go
Alex
ahead, go
Carey
ahead.
bats that low down the order for a reason. He isn't your best batter in the squad. I did say he's going to be a best left-hander at least, and he's going to play well. But if you look at, I think there was a question on Steve Smith as well. I think we have a graph on Steve Smith and Labuschagne's contribution to the
yeah,
Australian team in terms of both runs scored and balls faced. I think, yeah, here we go. So if you look at it right here, they've scored 48 percentage of the runs and they have faced more than 50 percentage of Australia's balls faced. So that's how
mm,
dependent they are on Steve Smith and Manas Labuschagne. One player I really think that they missed. I know we spoke a lot about Cameron Green, but I really think they missed someone like Mitch Stark for two reasons. Mitch Stark has an average of 32 in India. He is, in terms of their in the current squad. If you look at the highest run scored in India, Steve Smith has scored 722, David Warner scored 399, and then Mitch Stark has scored 263 runs. So you see, Mitch Stark is an incredible
Jalen, I'll just
batter.
take one innings away from that. He scored a 60 or 70 run knock in Pune, which was a deciding
Yeah.
factor once again. A lower order batter coming in and trying to go all guns blazing. But after that, he was found out as well. In conditions which are going to turn
But I
square,
mean,
he's going to be found out
yeah.
once again.
I agree with you, but then one thing
And
with
Mitchell Stark's
Mitch Stark
batting has
is,
dropped drastically over the last 3 to 4 years as well.
but one thing about Mitch Starkable is, in these conditions, one thing that really goes for him is, if he stays there, he's not going to stay mute. He's going to do something about it. He's going to, if he stays there, he's going to score at 15 of 7 at least. And that's where, they missed Stark. And another thing that they really missed is that left hand angle. Also, because he would have created that rough outside the left-handers Austin much quicker if he was playing in this team. So I think that's where they missed him in these three aspects. He could have been a player, could have at least increased or inflated that lower mid order lower
Yeah.
order contribution, because Todd
Yeah.
Murphy, Scott Boland are not really the best of batters. We saw the way Todd Murphy got dismissed. That was a very I think Rohit Sharma didn't even have to move a muscle. He just stood there and took the cash. Probably the easiest cash he's taken.
Yeah. Right. And that's why I will take this question up as well. Do you think Hazelwood and Stark can really make a difference in next match if they come? And will they really go in with three pacers in Delhi? Because it still can be a risk with Patrick Cummins being a sure starter. You can only play one more pacer, and it could possibly be Hazelwood considering his decent record against India. He can be extremely testing again on pitches like this where he can come in and ball one length, one line, try to test Indian batsmen's outside edge. I know some of his balls might not even carry in Delhi, but the factor being he can also be extremely good when it comes to consistency bowling wicket to wicket lines. If they miss in, especially if invariable bounce comes into play on day 5, day 4, if the match goes to those days, Hazelwood can be much more potent in comparison with Stark, who can leak a lot of runs, which could
And
be
then
detrimental
I
for
think I'll
Australia.
just add to that. I think Jadin spoke about Stark having a batting average in excess of 30 in India. He also has a bowling average in excess of 50 in India. So I think he will not add any value unless obviously the reason being just to uh, dampen the pitch a bit more, create those rough. Like he could have been used uh, in this test, but I don't think he'll be effective in that Delhi test, and I definitely don't see him playing. Especially because I think the second seamer Scott Boland did a decent enough job with the ball. He was supposed to probably one wicket could have done justice to his bowling figures, but I think he was just not
Yeah.
tried enough. Pat Cummins did not trust him enough to give him the ball at crucial
I have a
junctures,
feeling
and I
Australia
think
will be
with
very tempted to go in with a bowler like Mitchell Swepson if they really have to get another angle as well. More than
see, I
Ashton
think
Agar,
if you can
they could be tempted to go in with.
if you can add in Cameron Green instead of Matt Renshaw, you can obviously have a Swepson instead of Scott Boland, because if Pat
Also
Cummins is not
depends
going to
on
trust him,
Yeah,
yeah.
I really think, but for me, even I really think they're going to play Ashton Agar. And I'll tell you why. Because they're really worried about their batting more than their bowling, and Ashton Agar will give you something with the bat in the lower order, and they will most likely Cameron Green might still not ball, because I think his finger injury is not still healed as much, so he might not ball still. He might be
I don't
playing
think
as a
he can
pure
bat
backup.
either. That's one of the reasons. His finger injury is there. He
Yeah.
won't be able to bat properly as well. So I don't think he'll make it to the 11 at all. If they're going to bring any change, it's going to be bringing Ashton
But
Agar instead of Matt Renshaw and
But
taking
I
that
don't
extra
think
bit
that
of.
is going to
no,
like
I
put
think
in a
if if
lot of
if, if
on the
Cameron Green
back.
doesn't play able, it's going to be Travis Head who comes in, simply for the reason that you don't want to have another half batter, because you're going to be replacing Matt Renshaw with Ashton Agar, who isn't as good a batter. And from what I heard, and from what the reports came from the Australia's camp in Bangalore, is that Ashton Agar was not bowling accurate lines. He was all over the place when he was bowling in the camp, and even with his batting, he was not very effective. That's the reason why they went ahead with Todd Murphy, because in the
Yeah.
camp, the decision was made in the camp. Because even when we initially heard about the squad, Todd Murphy was nowhere heard about. It was only during the camp and afterwards where people started to
Yeah.
whispers of Todd Murphy playing ahead of Ashton Agar came into picture. So unless
Yeah.
and until Cameron Green isn't playing, I don't really see Ashton Agar being an option here, because you need
Yeah.
to replace a batter, because that's where they really need someone to step up. And Cameron Green, even though he's not played in India so far, he's only played in Sri Lanka. He's still done a decent enough job there in Sri Lanka. He can be an aggressive option as well, because we've seen when he played throughout his Test career, he isn't someone who's going to just stay there at least until and unless things are again, that the whole pressure of Australia seeing a brown pitch in India comes into his mind as well, which I really hope I think that is really the major problem for them. If they get out of that
Mm.
mindset, especially in the first innings, I felt that's what really hurt them. This pitch, first innings, 300 should have been scored. That's where they really messed
No,
up.
I know. I
And then
really feel Australia will be missing the Asian tracks of Pakistan rather, where you had highways which were provided to them, where Australian batters were able to bat for 3 to 4 days
yeah,
and score a lot of runs rather.
But also if they
Michael,
go ahead with go ahead bringing in Travis Head instead of Matt Crenshaw, I think they'll still have that fifth bowling option loophole. And even in Delhi,
yeah,
I
that's a
would
good
I
point.
won't
I still
yeah.
think Travis Head is a better bowler than Renshaw and Manas Labuschagne put together. But even there, I personally feel Travis Head's record in Asian conditions have been extremely poor. That's why I feel
yeah,
they can go in with the risk of going with Ashton Agar. I know it'll possibly hamper their batting a little bit, but then it still gives them that little bit of edge in taking Indian right-handers. For example, Rohit Sharma struggles against left-arm spin on good surfaces, and that's where
Virat
they can
Kohli
possibly
does,
make
yeah.
use of that. Virat Kohli does. Chiteshwar Pujara does. That's
Yeah.
that's been India's weakness over the last few years as well. Struggles against good left arm spinners. Maybe if Australia can take the risk of playing Ashton Agar, you never know how accurate he's going to be. He's still an experienced campaigner. He still played under immense pressure circumstances as well. If you talk about BBL or for Australia in World Cups, so that's
But
going to be
once again
Australia's
with
tough
Ashton
call. They
Agar
have
as
5 days to make
well,
it.
I think
There's
he
6 days
did not
rather
have the
to
best of
make that
BBLs.
call. Yeah, there are possibly 6 days to make that call. It's good that they got done with the match now itself. If tomorrow also it would have gone, it would have
That
been
was the
extremely
idea.
tiring for them. It could be a blessing in disguise. Rather, they are out today and they can take 2 days off, then travel to Delhi and take a call there. And with the Dharamshala Test match also being a little unsure, you do not know where the match is going to be held. Indoor as well. Vishakhapatnam is the reserve venues at this point. Both are going to turn a lot. We've seen it over the years how those two venues can also turn. Can India make it 4-0? I was very clear from the word go. India will win it 4-0. It just does not look like a world number one team to me. A lot of hype and no walk. That's what it is. No team has really figured out how to play Ashwin and Jadeja. Actually, no team has. That's a factor. That's a fact.
I
I don't have
mean,
to even talk
if
about
you
it.
guys caught Ashwin spell in that lunch session, how do you play that? No
Yeah.
one was able to. He was spinning it at what, 50 degrees, 55 degrees. I mean, I don't know. I'm not very good at math, but it was just
5 degrees.
massive turn.
There
It
was
was
5 degrees.
massive turn. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, can Washington and Akshar do the transition of Ashwin and Jadeja? Those are some really tough boots for them both to fill. But then
But I
I
think
still
Akshar
expect
is doing
Indian
a
spinners to be these both.
pretty good enough
for
job
me,
trying to fill in Jadeja's boots whenever he gets a chance. For Washington Sundar, I think he'll have to gain a lot of experience. I think Washington Sundar, first
I
of all,
think
he'll
for
have
me,
to start spinning the ball more. Yeah,
For
go
me,
ahead.
Yeah.
how we
I
miss
mean,
MS Dhoni as a finisher in white ball, I think we'll miss Ashwin as a spinner for Indian team because
We
you have
will,
an
but
average.
I'll say only bright spot is you have two ballers who are ready on the wings as well. I really want to see Washington also get a lot more
But
test
then
matches
for
under his belt,
me,
or at least domestic matches on in red
for
ball
me,
cricket.
I still feel Aksar has to improve his batting to match Jadeja because Jadeja has an average of 37 in tests right now and
but
at bowling
but
average
then again,
23.
Jadeja started off really slowly. I think after since
Of course,
2016,
and that's my
2017,
point.
Jadeja averaged only 23, 24. Yeah.
And if you
That's my
look at the
point. He
graph,
has to
both have a
improve
very
his
similar
batting, but
climb as well. Akshar's batting
yeah,
is also coming off late pretty well. Even if you look at this particular game,
Exactly.
scoring 80 runs when all the other batters in both the teams failed, that's impeccable effort. And he did not look in trouble
yeah,
at all throughout the course. Even Jadeja was dropped a couple of occasions, but Akshar looked
yeah.
extremely solid.
Yeah, so my point being exactly right. I think they have I think for me Aksar is ready with the ball at least. In terms of batting, he still has some way to go, but I think you can see him climb the trajectory. But with Ashwin, he is a world class spinner, and the amount of thinking he puts into a game, the amount of what do you say skill he has developed over the years. I think right now in terms of off spin at least in Test cricket, India doesn't have someone waiting. Washington Sundar is a great player, but you cannot put him in the same mold as Ashwin, and that's where I
You
really
definitely
think
can't. I'm just saying you can use him as a replacement because Ashwin is not going to play
same
forever,
role,
right?
yes, same role, yes, Abel, but you'll miss
And
him
you'll
as
get a
a
little bit of
bowler.
additional batting as well with Washington Sundar. I can
Yeah.
assure you his
So
batting is much better, but
yeah,
his off spin definitely has to improve a long way. That's only going to happen with
No,
correct.
as
he'll
many
have to
matches
be
we
more
play.
fearless. First of all, he'll have to add some more flight to that and some variations to his bowling.
Yeah,
Flight definitely. I think Ashton Agar. I mean, Washington Sundar is very one-dimensional. Ashton Agar as well. He just looks into balls into the stumps and just go after, like, does not spin the ball much. So I think Washington Sundar in that way, he has a long way to go, but he is only 23, 24. He has a long time
Yeah.
ahead of him. So
Correct.
Yeah.
definitely another 4-5 years and he might come of age. But
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
at this
I
point, I
think
think
Kuldeep Yadav is not a
just
bad
to
shout as
talk
well,
about,
to get that particular
I think
position.
Kuldeep
definitely,
Yadav
with the
stands
form that
much
he is in.
more in line to replace the role that Ashwin plays.
And just to talk about Ashwin's quality, I mean, Australia, all that talk about preparing for Ashwin separately, and Ashwin still managed to be the leading wicket taker in this test match. Eight
Yeah.
wickets, effortless, eight
That's
wickets,
what
and
we
it
were telling, right?
looked
It
so
just got to
effortless.
their
Yeah,
head a lot more. They maybe overthought a lot more
Overplanned
than
for it,
what they
yeah.
really expected, and that really does not help, especially in conditions like India. The moment you start overthinking, it's going to be detrimental. And people were really, praising Australia with the camp they set up in Alur. It was very good. They're preparing by scuffing up the pitches, getting Mahesh Bhatia from Baroda. But I really thought they were preparing for one particular bowler, and it was really getting to their head a lot. Even in Sydney, they had a preparatory camp where they roughed up the pitches and they were trying to play Nathan Lyon out there. I really thought they were trying to overplay the things, and the moment they saw the
For
pitch,
me,
they got extremely scared there as well.
the prep was there, but when your preparation only puts more
I
fear
think
in
the
you,
prep only
that's
did
where
good
it goes
to
wrong.
bowlers. I mean, Todd Murphy was came out of this camp a very, I mean, a very good
Yeah.
youngster. He has bright prospects ahead of him, and probably can go on to replace Nathan Lyon. But he'll definitely has a long way to go. He'll have to prove himself. But some positives that Australia brought about from this camp was the form of Todd Murphy, and this is why, like, we have been very vocal about how form is very important at a particular juncture. I mean, Nathan Lyon, with the stature of a bowler, he is 460 wickets in test matches overall, and still you have a youngster coming in, making his debut, playing his first game, and picking up 7 wickets in an innings. So I think that is just what form can do to you, and I think these are lessons that Australia can take off from this match, and I
Yeah,
think they should just clear the slate and start afresh. I mean, the more they think about it, the
yeah,
more they think about the pitch, the more they think about Ashwin, they are going to suffer.
yeah. That's one factor. That's the base of all issues in sport in general. The moment you start thinking about your opposition, then you're not going to do any own good for yourself as well. So that's where Australia lost their mental battle more than their battle on the
Yeah.
field. Having said that, that's the end from us for this particular test match. We'll be back previewing the next one, and also footballing action will be here. We'll be back tomorrow as well, previewing some of the big contests which awaits us from in Champions League this midweek, and also in Europa League with Manchester United taking on Barcelona. And we'll also be talking about Europa Super League, uh, which is a, which is a which is a topic of discussion. It's a debatable point. There are own pros and cons with that particular aspect of tournament, which is proposed by Fiorentina Perez, Laporta, and also the founding members like Juventus, Madrid, and Barcelona. Thank you all for joining us. From this point of view, this is it from us. We'll be back hopefully in Delhi, previewing that match and seeing how things go from there on for Team India, and hoping India takes a 2-0 lead and hopefully whitewashes Australia in India like they did in 2013, which means India will have a direct qualification into the WTC final and face Australia in one last battle in Oval in on June 7th to see who is the best team in the world. So that's what I hope, at least. That's what you all will hope also. Thank you all for joining. Have a good time, all of you. See you all very soon. Bye bye.
Good night,
Bye bye,
guys.
guys.